Hey, welcome back. It's Food News and Chews Radio. Thanks for joining us today. It's presented by our friends at Sullivan University, online at sullivan.edu. Jeremy Ashby and Sylvie Lovely. How y'all doing?
Hey,
Fantastic.
It's been crazy. You know, we had a crazy last weekend.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. We're a week and a day away from the wind event that happened last week. Some people just got power back. You guys had lost power.
I lost power for 4 hours on Friday night, and then my kids moved in, and they didn't get it back till last night. Or I forget my days, but anyways, last weekend.
But they were out without power for almost a week.
You were smarter than us. We had to go buy a flashlight. It was a good thing Kroger's even had some.
Yeah.
And then we were just like foodless. And we didn't have propane, like you said you did. This is good, I bought a roast chicken at Kroger's. Okay, I said, this is cool. And I bought you're going to love this, Jeremy. And I bought a package of beans, barbecue beans to make with I go home and I turn on my gas oven. It doesn't work without electricity.
Oh, no. I didn't know that.
The gas oven won't ignite, or the stove?
The stove.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a way around that, but...
Is there?
Yeah.
I needed you.
I know.
You were a little busy because you had your own issues.
No kidding. But, yeah, it's pretty much a mess for everybody. You know, just power outages. Nobody knows what to do anymore, right?
Yeah.
Well, and to have come at such an odd way, windstorm.
Me and my family are big campers, so we actually use it as an excuse. We didn't have power for like 2
party.
days. We had a party. All of our friends brought their food over. I had propane. I have a campfire in my backyard, a big fire pit. And we just cooked. We just, cooked over cast iron, cooked over fire, made a big buffet for everybody, and we fed a lot of people. It was a lot of fun.
I love it.
And then, luckily within 48 hours it came back on because, for a day or two it's fun.
Yeah.
For a week, it's not.
Yeah, once you're dipping down into your cupboard and basement for all your preserves and pickles and such, then,
Speaking of stuff like that,
Right.
Artisanal foods.
Artisanal foods.
Let's talk about it.
Well, that and Kentucky Crafted coming up. It's kind of the artisanal food show. I think that getting in, we have this Kentucky Proud designation you can get.
Yeah.
And that's been a big question I've been getting from other chefs in the region, including myself, now that kind of, COVID's kind of changed the way a lot of restaurants do business. I think people are looking to get products into consumer lines and kind of putting their name out there in different ways than selling food out of restaurants.
Honey and sauces and stuff like that would probably be the...
Well, also, I imagine you kind of want to buy as local as you can. When we see national supply chain issues, your product stability is probably much more favorable if you're buying it from a mile down the road than California.
Well,
and people are like kind of wanting that now, right? There's some new.
Here's some stuff about artisanal foods. One, the name is growing. Artisanal, and you'll see it now on even mass-produced stuff because it sells food, right?
It does.
Because people are more health conscious, and it's the nostalgia.
And I heard that that term was first used when describing baking back 10, 15 years ago. Artisanal bread, But, same thing you're talking about, Sylvia, just how that
evolved. And then
evolved.
the restaurants are getting into the act. Groceries are getting into the act. And that's more about branding and stuff like that. But, like, Kroger's has a whole wall of local products.
They do. And have you seen more and more of the corporate brands entering the supermarket? Arby's curly fries and White Castle sliders. They're taking their main products and putting them in grocery stores.
And it's important because Americans are getting more health conscious and nostalgia conscious.
Yeah, no doubt.
Takes them back. If you think something is handmade, it has a mystique.
Well, I'm glad we're kind of getting some sense about us in this country. I think we're behind the rest of the world, in terms of shopping in supermarkets. You were talking about some numbers where people are actually reading labels.
87% are somewhat interested.
Yeah.
And 56% are dead serious about labels.
That's pretty cool.
What are you looking at? When you look at labels, are you looking at the ingredients? Are you looking at where it's made? Are you looking at for names you don't recognize? What are the kind of things you're looking for?
I think they're health conscious. I do that. I now read labels, and I never used to, but I'm looking for salt. I'm looking for sugar.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to go with things that are and some things I'll even buy organic, even though it's much more expensive.
So I find it with things like tomato sauce. If you want to buy a tomato sauce that's just tomatoes without sugar, A, it's hard to find, and B, you're going to pay a lot more because you have to go into the upper tier brands. And what was $1 a jar is now $7 or $8 a jar.
know.
At that point, make it yourself. Make it yourself. It's just
Or
gonna
buy
be
stuff
better.
from Joyce and Charlie.
Yeah, Joyce, like Friends Drift In, they've got the canning, pickling, preserving, selling thing figured out, who we're going to be talking to. But, I don't know, guys. You can make some of things yourself. I want to talk through one recipe for you. It's one I've used at Azure for 17 years, guys. I mean, honestly, I've been trying to get rid of this recipe, but every time I go to take pimento cheese fritters off the menu, we have serious problems.
I'd
and I'm
kill
not
you.
right. See, there we go.
You're
And
talking about the peach chutney.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. Like, I love them, but every now and then you're like, man, we could offer something different.
No.
They're like,
They're
no.
so good.
They're the best. The beer cheese fritters with the peach chutney is one of the best
Killer.
food combos I've ever had.
It's crazy good.
It's really good.
So, we talk about jams, jellies, chutneys, etc. Chutney is going to be, I consider it like, I guess, a jam or a preserve, but the addition of acid or vinegar. So that's kind of the key difference I think you're going to find between a jam, jelly, preserve, and you had a question about that.
Yeah, so I know. So there's jams, jellies, preserves, chutneys, and
Yeah.
marmalades.
Right.
I know a marmalade contains the rind or the skin of the fruit, and that's what designates a marmalade from like a jelly
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
jam. But
So what are the differences of the
yeah,
others?
what's the difference in the other ones?
Well, the jam and preserve are very, very similar. We're talking about kind of whole pieces and
Yeah.
chunked
Chunked
fruit.
seeds. There's even seeds.
And
right?
seeds are going to be, in your
ones.
preserves, right? So I think maybe jam would be, I don't know, not really seeds. I mean, some jams contain seeds like raspberry, but one thing, the jelly is just going to be thickened cooked fruit juice and sugar. So that's a jam. There's not
And
going to be
jellies
any.
have pectin, which holds the shape of the jar, right?
They do, but a lot of times fruit's going to contain natural pectin. So
Okay.
after you cook it with sugar,
What is
you
pectin?
it's just a gelling agent. It happens
what's
naturally.
natural? Oh,
Like it's in the ingredient. It's in fruit. It's in certain vegetables. And what happens is the pectin, once things get cold, it makes it gel, like gelatin does.
So the best way to describe it, it's like it's like the vegetable version of collagen in meat. Like if you ever make a chicken stock and it turns solid, it's like that, but with vegetables.
Yeah, kind of. So there's jelly being just the juice, very thin and wobbly, and then jam being something usually crushed with sugar and a little acid, but the chutneys are going to be sometimes savory, sometimes sweet. And the one I'm going to give you today is the bourbon peach chutney we do. Guys, we're going to take about 3 cups of peeled fresh or frozen peaches. If you want to save yourself some time, get the frozen IQF slices of peaches. You're going to take about a half of a yellow onion and julienne that. You're going to take about 2 tablespoons of fresh ginger and have that chopped. You're going to need a diced red pepper, and you're going to need brown and white sugar and just a little bit of cider vinegar. I like cider vinegar.
Yeah.
Then at the end, a half a cup of bourbon. So what happens here is we're going to place all the ingredients. You don't have to do anything, but let's say we talked about 3 cups of peaches. Let's go with, I don't know, a quarter cup of each sugar, like brown sugar and white sugar, along with that 3 cups. That's going to give you the
sweet,
ratio.
but it's not overly sweet.
Right.
It's not equal parts sugar and fruit.
Right.
yeah,
so
that
you're
apple cider will bring it down.
Right.
And we'll add just a couple tablespoons of that apple cider vinegar and then slowly put on the pot. First, you're going to sweat it, which means kind of low temperature where your pan is overcrowded, it's full of stuff. And you'll see a little steam kind of rise up in your pan, and then the thing's kind of slowly cook down, but it never pulls any color from the bottom of the pan, as in it's not hot enough to make it brown. So you basically are going to just cook this into a syrup. It's going to bake 20, 25, 30 minutes. I like to keep this one kind of loose because of the natural pectin when it cools down, but also this kind of chutney is meant to be syrupy because it sauces a lot of meat.
Yeah.
But if you cook it down too much, those big chunks of peach or whatever you want, your ingredient is all you get. But if you have a lot of the liquid too, that syrup kind of coats the plate.
Right.
You get a chunk of peach, and then you can kind of roll,
yeah, that is
something in your syrup. So it
Perfect.
gives you a little bit of a sauciness. So anyway, that's going to keep 2 to 3 weeks in the fridge. And I'm going to go over it again. Frozen peaches, yellow onion, ginger, red pepper, brown and white sugar, and cider vinegar.
And then you told the portions a minute ago, but what can you put it on?
I like this on everything. For instance, it's on the the pimento cheese fritters at Azure. We put it on our blackened salmon sandwich, that's a killer combination, guys. If you want just to knock somebody out with dinner, a quick one, you can make this ahead of time and last 2 to 3 weeks. But make this peach chutney, pan-sear or grill some salmon, pour this on it, then crumble some goat cheese on it, knock you out.
It's great. So I've had it during the pandemic. I bought a couple of the meals, the family meals, and I got some of the pizza chutney. It's great the next day on a biscuit for like a more like an adult biscuit, if you know what I'm saying. Because it's not like this. It's not like the jelly by the grocery store. It's definitely a more complex.
Taste,
yes, and it's really good for like a midnight biscuit sandwich.
Yeah, and let me ask you,
really
Chef,
good for that.
what we hear is, and you have some of these kinds of things like tomato jam, bacon tomato jam, and that used to not be when I was growing up. You just had sugary jams and jellies.
Fruit.
Well, you probably didn't have much of anything but jelly. But how do you tell me about that? I mean, like you can have jalapenos now. You can have it's that sweet and sour combo.
Sweet and savory is a big deal, and I think that as the United States has matured in its culinary knowledge, these things have been around in India and Britain forever. These kind of combinations of sweet and spice and salty and savory and sweet and savory in these jams and chutneys. So it's really prominent now. I think that happened with the kind of turn of fusion cuisine through the 90s, but it's not common. I love that when we take. If you want, add a whole jalapeno to this recipe I just gave you, and you'll have like a sweet and spicy jam.
Oh, I like that.
Yummy.
Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Do that with any of these things. The sweet and savory works when you're dealing with your entree, or appetizer. I wouldn't go and put like a bourbon tomato jam on a piece of cake. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they have their place.
Right.
Each thing has its...
Right. They don't maybe need to go on your dessert course, but they can accentuate your savory courses with sweet without making it dessert-like.
You go back to like lamb and mint jelly.
Right.
It's an old mint jelly isn't really sweet. In fact, I don't know what else you do with mint jelly other than put it on lamb. I don't think I've ever had it any other way.
That's about really it.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about it. But it's more of
like patented.
Yeah, it's like
it just is what it is.
Yeah, someone, 300 years ago decided that lamb went with mint and jelly, and that was it.
And it does.
Yeah.
It does, and it goes
an unwritten rule.
Right.
Spring lamb, spring mint, it all flows and goes together. It's a magical combination. But it's not the only combination out there, which is really what we had until probably 1985.
Yeah.
Just lamb and mint jelly. That's all.
That was
you
it.
got.
That's all
but
you
now
did.
you can
That's right.
you put a spicy pepper jelly on a fish.
Oh my gosh!
It'd be great. You can do that. You put it on your salmon sandwiches. We're going to talk to Joyce and Charlie Pinson coming up in a little bit. They are with Friends Drift In. They're going to be at the Kentucky Crafted Market that's going on this weekend at the Horse Park. But they make a whole line of really savory jellies.
Jellies.
When it comes to what we're talking about, canning, preserving, pickling artisanal craft products, they've got this figured out. They did it from the ground up. It's going to be a good listen here.
Yeah, and they're good. They're such advocates for Appalachia and selling product out of Appalachia.
Good, positive people, all about Kentucky, all about chefs, restaurants, farmers, everybody. Just our kind of food people.
And they make delicious stuff, and that's the most important thing. They make delicious stuff.
That's right.
They make delicious stuff. If you've never had Friends Drift In, we've had some of the. I've had the strawberry jalapeno. I've had some of the. They have a lot of flavor. They have a lot of products.
Yellow squash jam's one of my favorites. It's very interesting.
So explain it, because I've never had this. Explain yellow squash jam. It's a savory jam, right? Or is it sweet?
I mean, it's got sweet to it, but it's tart also, I believe, maybe with lemon. If that I remember the flavor correctly, there could be ginger in there. I can't. But, it's kind of chunky and rustic, but has a unique, very refreshing, effervescent flavor, which I think could use to accentuate a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, and bourbon is also another thing people are infusing into these things, right?
Why not make it more Kentucky with bourbon, right?
Yeah.
So what about, and we only got about a minute left, and we'll get to Friends Drift In here next segment. But what about, like, if you're new to like jam and jelly making. Like I've made jams and jellies, but I don't can them.
I'm impressed.
Canning is its own thing.
Yeah,
and you want to make sure you know what you're doing. So I'll do like refrigerator jelly, like you were saying with your chutney. It's a refrigerator jelly. You don't have to can it for preserving. Is that a good way for people to start? Is making something like
at home? Yeah, sure. You're not worried about selling it in time and temperature. I wouldn't mess with all that. If you're gonna make a huge batch, as in 100 jars, then you need to be learning how to get that
do
stuff
it.
preserved.
Otherwise, you can just kind of have fun with it.
Exactly.
And play with it.
Yeah, I mean, the recipe I gave you was for 3 cups of peaches. That's one little bag from the grocery store.
That'll last you a week.
If that doesn't last more than 3 days in your house, then I've done my job wrong.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Hang on. We're going to talk to the Friends Drift In, Joyce and Charlie next. Don't go anywhere. It's Food News and Chews Radio. Hey, we're back. It's Food News and Chews Radio, and it's time to talk some jams, jellies, and canning in general. The Kentucky Crafted Market's going on this weekend, and you can check that out. We have the Pinsons here. Joyce and Charlie have been on before.
They're great people. We never get to see. I love having you on the show because that means we get to see you.
It's been 2 years since we've
been
here.
I don't
2
like
years.
that.
Crazy.
2 years?
Well,
I thought we
things
did
have been
this
crazy.
last year.
I thought so.
Well, we didn't do Food News and Chews last year.
We didn't?
That's
No.
right. You did Jack Patty.
We did Jack Patty. Yeah.
We've got you this time.
That's right. Well, it's the time of year where like Kentucky Crafted comes to town, which is where we have a lot of artisanal people bringing goods to Central Kentucky
out at the horse park, right? Yeah.
And my favorites. I've got a few out there, but my top favorite's going to be Friends Drift In. One I know the people that make it, so that makes it even more delicious. But the quality is there, and quite frankly, we've watched Joyce and Charlie go from an infantile stage to growing produce, to pickling, to canning, to running a farm, out of the insurance business. It's pretty interesting stuff. Like these guys are what we all want to be, the ones that take the jump into a food career and follow their passion. So welcome back, and tell us I want to know, what was the first jam and jelly you produced?
Probably blackberry, because we have a lot of blackberries, and of course on the mine sites, on the strip sites, we have those what are those husked berries that look like raspberries, Charlie?
Oh, they're called a wineberry.
Yeah, a wineberry.
Japanese raspberry.
What did you say on a mine? What'd you?
When they reclaim the mine sites, they come in and they replant everything. Well, back in the 60s and 50s and so even in the 70s when they didn't worry about native species, so they brought in what it's called a wineberry.
Okay.
It looks like a raspberry and it tastes like a raspberry, and when it gets ripe, the husk falls back and it turns into a red raspberry. They just have a lot more seeds than a regular raspberry, though. So really, it's hard to do anything with them other than using just the juice.
Now that's pretty interesting. So a wineberry. Now that we're on the topic, so you guys are down in Pikeville, where there has been plenty of strip mining and reclaiming of that territory. What other things kind of came from that? Wineberries?
I think that is a cool thing to talk about, by the way.
Autumn olive is our other one that we're very proud of. And the
Autumn
olive. It's a tree. It, again, was planted on the strip mines. It's invasive. Most people hate it, but there's 2 things that are really great about autumn olives. The first is that it's one of the first things to bloom, so the bees get extra, sugar and pollen right away, real early in the season. And secondly, it is really high in lycopene, which has a lot of health benefits.
Wow. Now, tell us about I think the strip mining thing, and I know you all are really actively promote Appalachia and actively promote products out of there. Is that I take it that's a successful thing that they've replanted?
Reclamation, it continues. I mean, we've got a coal company over in Martin County that's getting ready to do major acreage with apples. And,
wow.
See, that's good thinking.
The mine sites, once they're reclaimed, are really good to run cattle. People don't think of Eastern Kentucky as a cattle producing area, but we're comers. And I mean, they surprise you because they're in the hills and the hollers and nobody sees them.
Mm-hmm.
She's right. Those big flat spots, if they leave them flat on top of those mountains, they sow that in grass and make nice pasture lands.
I bet it is. Yeah.
Fascinating. I think that's just cool.
Well, yeah, and Twitch looked up autumn olive. I'm pretty familiar. Me and Joyce and Charlie have been talking about that for 10 years now. But these little berries, there's a little seed to them, which kind of makes things interesting, so to speak, right?
You can run them through a mill, though.
You can? They
do break
mill,
up?
You know, the biggest thing with autumn olives is that because they have this high lycopene, they separate. And so we have a process that we do for them. We're not producing them commercially, but we do them at home. It separates, and what they call it at home is Halloween jelly, because it looks like it's spun out of a centrifuge. It's kind of clear on the top, and then it kind of red pink, and then at the bottom it's
fascinating.
red because the lycopene pulls to the
What
top.
is it? Autumn olive?
It's
Is that
called
what you're
autumn olives.
Autumn olives.
Autumn olives.
It's an Asian
Yeah.
bush.
Yeah. It's
You know, back
Asian.
when I was a kid, there was some evergreen bushes that sprouted some red berries. They kind of look like those. They're only like the size of a BB, maybe a little bit bigger than a BB.
Well, I was going to say they look. It's one of those things in nature. Which is why you got to be careful, because they look like another berry. I don't know if it's called laurel or, but I know you're on the wintergreen bush.
Definitely not when you're looking at them in person, because of the way when light hits them, it looks like King Midas touched them. They've got
Really?
flecks of gold.
Oh
Yeah, the
wow!
flex-
They're
gold in 'em.
beautiful.
They're more
They're
orange
beautiful.
And
than
this
they
is
are red.
that why they're called autumn olive? I don't know. Just
Don't know.
interesting.
So I got an idea for you. Whenever tomato season comes in, you've got some preserved autumn olive. Why don't you guys make a high lycopene homemade ketchup? You know, something that hits every.
Because that's what tomatoes have in it, right?
It's got a sugary kind of tartness to it. With you add sugar and vinegar to tomato ketchup. Just maybe do a big old lycopene.
But
It
lycopene
works
is what's in
It's got
tomatoes.
Right.
The flavor is kind of reminiscent of a cranberry.
Right.
For the listeners, it's got that tartness and cleanness.
Well, I'm going to work on that for you guys and send you the
I
rest.
love that. I
That's
love
a
that.
good question though, because he was talking about making like ketchup out of them. So when you think of jams and jellies and things that are intimate, you think of things that are sweet, but they don't necessarily have to be. You can make savory versions, right?
We are known for our savory jams and jellies. Particularly, we do a peach habanero, strawberry jalapeno,
And then yellow squash.
red.
Ooh, I love
red.
that.
Yeah, we do a red pepper. We do a yellow squash, and our big seller, and one that we grow ourselves is the bourbon tomato. We grow a lot of those
Bourbon
tomatoes ourselves.
tomato.
Bourbon tomato jam. It's kind of a cross between a ketchup and
And a barbecue sauce is the way I would look at it. And I know
I'm
you've used
familiar.
it on steaks in the restaurant before.
Yeah, we buy it at the restaurant. I've done anything from just topping simple little fritters to it to just, on a piece of
Sounds
salmon. It's
delicious.
quite wonderful. And it's got some chunk to
Yeah,
it, like
yeah.
some rustic kind of rough chop, which
Yeah.
I like. A smooth jam is great, but this has that preserved kind of feel
Yeah.
to it, which makes it more rustic
Tell
and
us
more
about
mouthfeel.
Tell us about the fair. Tell us about this artisan art Kentucky
the
craft.
Kentucky Crafted. It will be Friday is to the trade, and then Saturday and Sunday. It's Saturday 10 to 4.
On Saturday 10 to 5.
It's 10 to 5, Sunday 10 to 4. Artisans from across the nation. This is a juried event, so this is not your flea market type of crafts. This is visual and textiles, paint, ceramics, jewelry,
Everything.
and a Kentucky Proud section. Furniture, woodworking, candles.
And it's important to know that some people may miss this because we air now. The podcast will be out, but what they need to know is this has been going on for a while, right? And,
This has. We're just back. Last year was the first year they came back after
In
the
person.
pandemic. This year they've expanded back to what it was before, in that they will be having eclectic music all day long, both days, Saturday and Sunday. There will be some interactive art exhibits where adults can sit down and do some artwork, as well as some children's spaces. The admission is free. It's $6 for parking. But any admission that you would like to donate goes to Team Eastern Kentucky, the flood victims, which is very, very near and dear to our
Yeah,
heart. Because
no
as
doubt.
a jam and jelly producer, we rent a kitchen. For our commercial, we rent a kitchen at Whitesburg, Kentucky, Kane Kitchen. And of course,
Were they
from
impacted?
August, after the floods, until just a few weeks ago, I mean, they were feeding 3 meals a day, so we could only get in like
Yeah.
9 o'clock and work till midnight or 1 o'clock making our jam. So we were out of
Wow.
product for the last half of our
heavens.
festival season.
And that's one thing people don't realize, and I'd love you to talk about that, is, you're a hobby farmer out there, you're a grower and producer, you like what you're hearing. What does it take to get something that you've grown into a jar legally?
There's two different classes. There is the commercial producer that can sell at the farmer's market, and they have to take classes through the extension office. Then there is the commercial producer that can sell anywhere across the nation.
And that's FDA label, everything.
We have to be inspected by the FDA. We have to take several classes. We have to have, all these safety requirements. We have to be inspected even when we do a lot of festivals. And I mean that a lot of times the local health department will come and inspect us as well as what we're inspected federally and statewide. And then, of course, if you're growing at all and you're growing, you have to have what used to be called GAP, but now they've called it Best Practices Produce Safety, I think. But it is another 6 or 8 hour course that you have to take. And I mean, it tells you things like triple washing your vegetables. If you have deer or something in your growing area, if they leave something, you have to mark that off in 6 or 8 foot. I'd have to go back and see, but you can't sell anything out of that area. You have to know what row each thing comes out of. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork, and it's not as glamorous as it used to be.
How do you sell your stuff? I know you're going to be doing it this. Do you sell here, or is it just juried? And then how do you sell? I mean, how can people? Because it sounds like to me it'd be better to buy your stuff than, at least that's me. Okay.
Well, we really emphasize our stuff on taste, and it's more healthy than most. We use a lot less sugar than most people do. You can buy it. We have a website, friendsdriftinn.com. We actually, if you're in the Pikeville area, we have a store at 128 Caroline Avenue. We're also in Lexington. We're in several stores here in Lexington.
We're in Sheffield-Weeda's at Zim's, and Wendy Corners.
Wendy Corners. We're also in Peggy's Gifts downtown.
Okay.
We're in the
Kentucky Proud.
the Boone Creek Creamery over on Palumbo.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
I'm amazed.
I mean, this is we've talked to you guys over the last couple of years, but this is kind of growing on the retail side, not necessarily just the going to the show
We
side.
do retail, and we have a wholesale business, and we do what they call co-packing. We do co-packing from Matt Jamie down at Bourbon Barrel Foods.
What does that mean?
It means that we do his product. We package some of his products.
Oh.
So we do his jams and jellies, and he co-brands it. He gives us credit on it, and we've done some co-branding for Oweda. We've done some apple butter for Oweda.
And there's like, and that's kind of a niche market as well, because there are people who will, I've seen things like bottle your own hot sauce. And so if you think you have a great hot sauce recipe, but you don't have a commercial kitchen available,
then you better rethink it.
right?
Yeah.
But there's companies that will do it for you. You kind of give them the recipe, and
if you trust them to, because it is a competitive market, and I mean, we are all very we're friends.
Yeah.
But we don't share recipes.
Yeah.
Well, they're
and it's a
tricky.
growing industry, right? I mean,
It is.
tell us
it
about.
is. And I mean, we consider ourselves. Well, we have jams now. We consider ourselves specialty foods. We've got several cocktails, syrups in development, and some other products that we're not ready to talk about yet. But they're in the state hopper.
So that's a good question, because in this day and age, we think of everything as out there. Everyone knows everything, open source, everything. But like you were saying, you do have very secret. We were even talking like temperatures and pectins, and you have very tight trade secrets that are just applied to your jellies.
We don't care to talk about the temperatures and all that, because that's just state regulations.
That's what they do,
But certain things that we put in our jams, we found that nobody else knows about, so we keep that to ourselves.
And you should, because whenever you go to production and bottling, and I've worked with some of these producers, you can send them a recipe, and they're going to send back 3 or 4 samples, and then you're going to find the one that's kind of closest to, your recipe, but something's always lost, guys. And then when you get into packaging and mass production, additives start getting involved. And I don't know if that's cost cutting, but those little trade secrets, if you can keep it all natural cane sugar, if you can keep things gelled with natural pectin and not go into xanthan gum and stabilizers,
which is in all the
suspenders,
products you get that are commercialized and
they
mass
taste
produced.
like it. Like literally, whenever
it's like
I
salad
can see and
dressings.
smell, taste xanthan gum from 10 miles away. It just, I could, by the look of the
And it's in
product.
everything.
Well, it just makes it snot.
Except,
Well,
except your stuff. It's not in your stuff.
when we pride ourselves when you taste, especially one of our fruit jams or jellies, you will taste the fruit will be the first thing you taste.
Oh, it
it's
sounds so
not,
good.
Not
And
the
it's-
sugar.
It's the first ingredient. It's not
Yeah.
sugar. Fruit is our first ingredient. Now, when we get into a pepper jams and jellies, it's a little bit different because of the pHs. We have to have more sugar in that. But on our fruit jams, it's always the fruit first.
And
Wow.
that's a secret if you want to know what's in it, what's the most in a product, any product. All your ingredients are listed by amount, the most
right.
to the least.
That's why I do find that most commercial things are way too sweet for me.
Me
'Cause
too. I found that too.
Yeah, I find it people kind of default to sugar when they don't know what.
But if you really savor food,
right,
and chef, I used to be able to eat ordinary food. Now I can't eat anything but yours, and so I'm sure I mean, seriously, I mean, it's hard.
No, you're right, and
You know the difference.
And I know where producers get in that battle. I see it, and they're chasing a bottom line, they're chasing a margin, and cane sugar is expensive. A lot
And
more.
it's hard to get.
Yeah,
Is
there's
it?
a lot more than high
Yeah,
fructose
supply
corn
chain.
syrup and things like that, which just make it a lot
Sugar
cheaper.
beets.
Sugar beet, yeah, exactly.
What
There's-
about supply chain? And you grow most of your stuff, right?
We grow a portion of it. We try to use as much Kentucky Proud products. So we use the Kentucky Blueberry Association for our blueberries, and we have several farmers that we work with because we can't do it all. I mean, we're just two people and a 21-year-old college student and an 85-year-old mama.
Everybody needs one.
Yeah, and that there's nothing wrong with that, guys. Doing a crafted product is still Kentucky Proud in Kentucky. You can bring in product from other places. The whole
really?
point is that you're doing and cooking here in Kentucky and doing a product that primarily stemmed from our region. So
Did you say you were getting into syrups and things like that?
Yeah,
As
we've got-
futuristic?
We've already got one. We've got one cocktail syrup already developed, and we may be doing some fruit syrups down the road as well.
And that's on the market?
We've got several other products in development.
well, that's part of
so-
the competition is constantly having new
Innovating.
products on the shelves.
Innovating. What kind of-
Exactly.
So I did want to share one thing out there that I've learned about increasing sugar content without the sugar. Maybe you guys
Really?
don't know this one yet, and it saves a lot of money. Okay, so anyway, it's basically it's a sous vide process, right? But one thing that I've seen done is they'll take any kind of fruit scraps, as in the cores and whatever, the leaves, the stems and shells. Let's just take a pineapple, for example. So all the outside of the pineapple, which you cut off, and the core, you can place in a sous vide bag with no water and seal it, and then you can sous vide it for about 36 hours. And what happens is you pull out the water, and then the natural sugars start to intensify. So you basically pulled a Hybrix sugar water out of trash that tastes
Really?
like pineapple.
Wow.
So anyway, that's one technique I've picked over the past couple of years. If you guys have a low harvest or anything like that, or just want to go more all natural, you can start with your fruit sous videing it for quite a while, or the scraps of it, and then still pull
Can
sugar
you explain
out.
sous vide for those of us like me who might not know what that is?
Yeah, you're basically vacuum sealing your food product and then cooking it
And
in
you
a
can do
water
all kinds of
bath
things,
at a
yeah.
set temperature for a long period of time. In this case, it's kind of a high temperature, but high temperatures at sous vide is 175, 180 degrees. So, but anyway, that's kind of a cool one out there for all the food geeks.
Well, we got to take a
Also, your cocktail syrups. That's kind of where it came from. That
Yeah.
spark is that's how a lot of producers are making those. Is the lemon, lime, and orange scraps and things like that. They're making fruit syrups from that.
Well, check out Friends Drift In at the Kentucky Crafted Market. It's going on this weekend. It's going on the rest of today and tomorrow. Joyce and Charlie, thank you guys so much for coming in.
We appreciate y'all.
All right.
We'll
love
see you in a minute. It's Food News and Shoes Radio.